Welcome to this episode of Playing in Traffic. Today is a very, very special episode because it is the first time that we are going to speak with a family member of somebody who has been affected by the WMSCOG and somebody who can offer a lot of insight into what parents and especially the mothers go through when their children are involved in this organization. So today we're going to speak with Caroline and also with AJ. They are a married couple with six beautiful children, and actually, two of them are involved in the WMSCOG, and they've been involved for a long, long time. And this family has gone through a lot, and they have a lot of um, stories and a lot of hardships to share with us. So, thank you, Caroline, for coming on with us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. We've been kind of grappling with the idea of having how to have a family member on without putting their situation into like a worse situation. And
Right.
so as we'll learn about your current relationship with your family and kind of what you guys have gone through, um, it's been and I when we first talked to you, I was trying to think if this podcast had come out and my sister was still in it, I
hmm
don't know how I would feel about coming on the podcast. And so I just want to say thank you for being brave and coming out and talking. And, um, I, there's a lot of your story that touches my heart. And, you originally reached out, your email made me just sob. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to have you share your story on here and thank you for being willing to do that with us.
Well, I've listened to a lot of podcasts that y'all have done, and it's a lot of happiness and joy that people have come out and are coming out with their lives and they're getting their lives back. But unfortunately, my story doesn't have an happy ending right now. So, I'm kind of still in the midst of it. But yes, I've talked to quite a few parents, and parents don't want to do this because we feel like that it's going to make our situation worse. I've had parents tell me that they feel like, and I felt like that, when I was vocal on the examining forum, I think that the church, I knew that they knew who I was. They figured me out and my children. And I felt like to me that they were trying to punish me through my children. And so I've heard other parents say that too. So, and we don't want to make our situation worse. We don't want to cause any pain and suffering for our children. But at this point, our family has no communication with our children. I haven't talked to my daughter in almost 3 years, and my son, I have talked to him a few times in those 3 years, but the conversations, especially the last year, have been very turbulent, and so it'll probably be a long time before we do talk again. He has talked to his father a few times, but um, I just feel like I really don't have anything to lose because I may never see him again. So that's kind of where I am.
Ooh, heartbreaking. Well, we appreciate you being here. And yeah, if you just want to kind of talk about your kids a little bit, maybe like explain how they were introduced to the church and how the Wimskog became a part of your family dynamic.
Okay, I thought I would just take a few minutes to kind of give a backstory of our family and what we were like. And we're a Southern family. We live on the Gulf Coast, and we had six children. When I was 23, I was widowed with a 17-month-old, and I remarried when I was 26 to my current husband, AJ, and he adopted my first son. And shortly after that, we had five children in 10 years. So they were all, the next group was pretty close. There's a 6-year gap between my first and my second son. The second son is the one that is in the WMSCOG, and then my first daughter. So we had four boys and two girls at the end. Just a quick story. Our first son joined the Marines after high school, and he had an injury while he was stationed in active duty in Camp Pendleton, and he has severe brain injury. And so I flew out there and was gone 6 months, brought him back to the house, and spent 3 years rehabbing him. Our whole family, was involved in that. So that was kind of a big thing in our family. I had to kind of, I was spread pretty thin, for a little while. I think my son was, he was like a junior in high school when that happened, and my daughter was like 9 years old. And so that happened, and then we kind of got back on our feet. But our children, we have a husband. My husband is in sales, and he's very strong type A personality. And he pushed my children in fitness, and they excelled in sports, and they went to a private school that was college prep, and we did the best we could. I felt like I was a really good mother. We had a Christian base. My husband was a Bible teacher, and I was a Sunday school teacher, and I played the piano at church. And we, did Bible camps for underprivileged children in the summer. And my son wanted to be a missionary at one time, and he went with his father to an orphanage in Honduras. And, we kind of had all those kind of things going on. Our second son that got in, our story starts with WMSCOG as he graduated from the Naval Academy. He went there for football, and he played for a year or two. And then after he graduated, he went to Virginia Beach, and he called us one day and said that he was going to go to a Bible study. And he said, Mom, Daddy, please pray for me, that they know a lot about the Bible, and I'm really excited. We're like, okay. So 3 days into it, I get a message from him, and he said, Mom, that missionary I give to? He said, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to start giving to the new church. So I said, oh, really? I thought that was odd. And so I said, so what's your new church? So he told me, he says, well, it's the WMSCOG, but don't look up on the internet because they don't have a lot of good things to say. So I immediately looked it up and stayed up all night, texting him and talking to him about the church. I found out that, they believed in a mother God and all that. And I was very concerned, and we got really upset. And so the next day, my husband took our RV up to where he was and spent 4 days to try to get him out. And so the first day he spent with him, he was on the ship, and they, talked about the Bible. We didn't really understand, the dynamics of the church at that time. And so he just tried to talk about the Bible, and he went to the church with him. And when when he walked in, he saw a big picture of a woman with flowers and, lots of people around her. And AJ, my husband, said, oh my gosh, he said so that's the mother God. And my son was very offended. And they went in the back, and they, tried to preach to my husband, and that didn't work. And so it kind of didn't end well. And so then immediately the church tried to separate my son from my husband. So they told him he needed to go preaching. He was supposed to meet up with my husband on a Sunday. He didn't show up until the mid-afternoon, and he was in a suit. And then there was a confrontation, and my husband just got really upset. My son got, he got his finger in my husband's face. It got really ugly. And my husband called me crying, and he said, we've lost him. We've lost him. He said, I failed. And he came home, and other than that time, my husband saw him for 15 minutes, and that was the last time he saw him 12 years ago. And so, we tried to, so immediately what I'd like to say, one of the reasons I'm doing this is because when parents have a child get in this, the first thing they think is, it's like your child is in the back seat of a car and somebody drives off in the car, and you just run down the road. You don't know what to do. You're just yelling, screaming, asking for help. And, immediately we started doing that. We, called people and told them, what happened. And, we asked our pastors to pray. And, I started immediately getting on the internet, trying to find, any information that I could. And so I just want to kind of tell our story, because this is I've talked to quite a few parents they would say, my child's been in for 6 months. What do you say? And I'm like, there's not a really good story. This is a marathon, get ready. It's going to be a long, drawn out ordeal, So, after he joined, I got on the internet and I just told my story to the examining website. I told it in such a way that the administration reached out to me and gave me some contacts from ex-members that this was a long time ago. This was like back in, I guess it was in like 2011. They gave me some contacts with some people in California that had been the original members in the Los Angeles church. And so I talked to one particular person quite often, and she explained to me, the ins and outs of the church. And so I got involved in that. I got on the forum. I met other parents. I called quite a few parents, and the parents that had been in for a lot longer than me, the ones that had been in for like 10 years, I was like, wow, they are so cynical. It's like they've just given up, like, wow, how could that happen? And needless to say, that's kind of where I am now, 11 years in or 12 years in. But so I got involved with that. And then I started, reading all the books I could on it. And Steve Hassan's books, were the ones that everybody recommended. I read those. I got on his website. My husband and I paid for counselors to counsel us. And we were told, just keep communication, whatever you can do, just don't bring up the church, don't bring up the Bible, just, bring up family things, try to keep them involved in the family, try to, just keep contact. And so every week I was calling him, and he answered. It was like watching a train wreck. You see your kid, he had friends and he was popular and he had a great job. And then he had this dog that he loved, and he had to give the dog up. His roommates thought he was strange, and so he had to leave that. And then eventually the church realized that we were causing problems in his life, and so they told him to move to an apartment. He told me he was sleeping in a bad part of town on a mattress on the floor, and he wouldn't let us know where he lived. So, we couldn't go up and get him or contact him like we would do that. And so we had this long, drawn out ordeal. So I sent my the third and fourth son up to visit him. And there was a confrontation between them, between the son that's in the cult and the third son. And the third son felt very threatened. So he had to leave a couple of days early, and he came home, and that just didn't go well. And so I was still trying to keep contact, still trying to reach out. So I took the oldest son who had the brain injury, and he and I flew up and stayed with my son for 3 days. We had the Korean music in the background when he picked me up in the car. We got to the apartment. He got his Bible out. He got very frustrated, very loud and very frustrated that I couldn't see what he was trying to tell me. I didn't believe.
When you went to go visit him, did you stay in his apartment or did you get a hotel room?
No, I stayed with him.
Okay.
And I had a roommate.
Okay.
So I think the roommate was gone. The roommate was gone. So we stayed there. Yes. And he slept on the sofa. But I wanted to go to the church, and I went to the church, and I was so nice. I tried my very best to be respectful, and I bragged on him. They showed me all the construction, and bragged on him because obviously they had him in charge of a lot of construction that they had going on. He was supposed to finish out the attic, and they said he was really good at it. And so I ended up leaving, and we left, I thought, it was on fairly good terms, and we communicated for a while. And then my daughter was, she was an All-American pole vaulter, and she was one of the best in the country in high school. She won all the state championships in our state. So she wanted to go to Louisville, and she got a full ride there. And so I thought she was doing all right. And she told me that he was going to come in town for Thanksgiving. So I was like, oh, good. You can talk to him. You can be another voice. Maybe you can be a voice of reason, because she was very smart. And, I thought she was a very devout Christian. And so anyway, she texts me and says, "Hey, I'm going in the restaurant now. You know, I'll let you know how it goes." So I don't hear from her for 3 days. And so then I finally reach her after 3 days. And the third son told me, he said, "Mom," he said, "she's in." I said, "What?" He said, "Mom," he said, "they've got her." And I said, "What?" And so I didn't know, but I got her on the phone and I could tell something was really wrong. And she says, "Look, we'll talk when I come home Christmas." So I was like, all right. I just couldn't believe it. So anyway, when she came home Christmas, everything had changed. I do want to just back up a second. I had 4 boys, and so I really wanted a girl. So this girl she was everything. She was the perfect daughter. I mean, I just adored her, everything about her. And I just can't tell you how much I love all my children. I love my son just as much, but it was just, we had a very special relationship. We would go shopping, get our nails done. She was a girly girl, but she was, she was just a wonderful person. And so anyway, I could tell when she came home Christmas that her demeanor toward me was drastically changed. It was like, you're an idol worshiper. Why did you tell me lies? You told me Bible stories. You didn't tell me truth. And I was like, what are you talking about? So then she finally told me. I said, "So what did he say to you?" And she said, "Well, I went in the restaurant and I was, going to talk to him about, trying to make him think, like, do you really think this woman is God? Do you really think that this woman that's 70 years old, that has ailments, that's really God?" And she said, he said, "Those are good questions. And I don't think I can explain this in a way that you can understand, but I know someone who can." So he takes her to the church. And of course, they keep her there for hours and she gets baptized. And by the time she comes home 2 weeks later, she's done, and so she ends up going back to school 5 days later. I don't really understand what's going on. He's talking to her in secret, and when she's in her bedroom, she's telling me that she can y'all still hear me? Okay. She's telling me that she's going out with her friends when she's really going across the state line to a church an hour away. And getting indoctrinated. So the whole time that she's home for those 5 days, she's really not. She's really at the church. And he's telling her what to do. Now that I understand, he's her branch. So, he's in charge of her. He's the one that's supposed to tell her, what she's supposed to be doing. I didn't understand that at the time. So, she's one of his 10 talents. So he doesn't want to lose her. And so anyway, she goes back up to Louisville and step by step, he teaches her how to divorce us. And, she goes to the school. She no longer needs our money. And it just goes from bad to worse. We're just extremely upset. And I hate myself now because I should have just driven up there and gotten her stuff and pulled her out immediately. But she had a $35,000 a year scholarship. She was All-American. She was the 8th best vaulter in the country. They had hired a coach for her. They'd given her tons of money, $20,000 worth of poles. They were spending lots of money on her. And I just hated for her to lose it. I should have done it. I should have gone right then and got her. But
Carolyn, you were in an impossible situation. So I know that you feel that guilt, but I hope that you can just know, like.
Yeah. So anyway, my husband and I got immediately, after a couple of weeks, we realized she didn't get out. She told us she was going to get out, but she didn't. And so she had a handler, and the handler wouldn't leave her alone. I didn't understand that either. I thought she could just stop. But you can't just stop. They're going to pursue you. They're going to show up at your place. So we went up there, and so when we went there, the whole church was waiting for us. She was waiting outside for us to come, and we went inside. The message was for us. It was a missionary who's real famous in the East Coast was the church. He was at the church at that time, and he did the message for us. And after it was over, we went in the back and we spoke for about 4.5 hours about the Bible, just went round and round. And so we finally got to impasse, and he said, look, he said, if you just let her alone, we'll let her stay in track. We'll let her stay in school. We'll let her come home. And I said, you will? I said, well, then we'll let her keep her car. We'll keep paying her bills. That's, if she, we'll just do that. We didn't want her to believe these things, but we were like, well, we'll just, as long as we can keep a relationship with her, we'll just back off, and we did. We went home and we backed off. And, she did come home. She did do track. She excelled in track because that's all she had. She didn't have any friends. They made her break up with her boyfriend, who I really think she liked a lot. Her friends were always calling us and texting us. They were so upset because, she was always gone. She was lying about where she was, and they were worried about her. But we just let it go on because she did still come home. And then about a year later, when she was going to conference, she was going to be All-American her third time. She was probably going to go to nationals again. And I don't know, to just have to explain this about track. When you're in track, everything is about the final conference in May. It's like the head coach, he was paying $35,000 for her and all these thousands of dollars for 7 other vaulters, $100,000, paying for all the her coach, and she had a personal massage, every day, and all this, that, and other. He was putting all this money in, but he was expecting to get points at the end of the year. The end of the year points was everything. Well, the end of the year, he calls us and he says, look, she's fixing to come in the office and sign out of track. She's quitting track, a day before conference, because I'm not going to let her go to Pentecost. And I was like, oh my word, and so I was just, seeing your kids do this, it's like a train wreck, one after another. That's how it was for our family anyway. And that's what I believe. But so I was like, I told her, I explained to her that day, I said, if you do this, I said, you break your rule. I said, I'm taking your car. I'm going to send someone to get your car this week. I'm going to take out no more credit cards, no more, car insurance, all that's over,
So was the day of Pentecost the same day as the conference? Is that what
Yeah.
it was?
The day after, and he wouldn't let her fly home.
Can I just say, like, as a former member, and I'm just looking from her perspective, like, also, I feel so sad for her in a way, which I just feel so sad because for her, that was a really difficult situation to make, because for her, that was like life or death in her mind. She thought that you know, by sacrificing, like, to her, there was just no choice.
And
And that just breaks my heart so much, because now looking from the other side, I understand she did have a choice.
What year was that again?
That was 2017.
Okay, so like the 2012 doomsday thing had come and gone already. Okay.
He got in at 11 right before the doomsday, and then she got in probably around 15.
Okay.
And but you're right, the coach, I could tell the times we went up to see her that there was a lot of friction. I could tell that he was letting her go to Pentecost and skip some meets. I could tell she skipped some things. He was getting aggravated at all the things that he had to contend with her being in this group. And he finally said, look, you're going to have to make a choice.
Right.
You can't leave conference. When you're in conference, you got to stay. So she didn't go. She wrote it off, and she signed out those papers. And all the 7 vaulters that went down, they all no-hided. They got no points. So the whole track program was for nothing that year. I mean, even the coach was so upset, all the members, all her teammates, she was the leader. And they all none of them got over the pole because they were so upset. So I followed through with my thing, because my thing was, My thing was that she lost her scholarship. There was no reason for her to be at that school. She could come back to our state. In our city, we had the third largest school in the state, and they wanted her desperately for pole vaulting and offered her a full ride. She could have gotten a full ride right then at 2 other schools really close to her house. So my thinking was, well, there's no reason for me to be paying for you to go um, to that school, because I mean, you lost your scholarship. I'm not going to pay it. I'm not going to pay $35,000 a year. I'm not going to pay for you to hang around and go to church. I'm not going to pay for your car to take members to church. I'm not going to pay for your gas or your car insurance, for you to just be up there running around to church. So I told her, she came home, we'd get in her apartment. She could go to church here, but she'd have to be close by. I'm not going to pay for her to be that far away. And so that, people listening to this, parents listening to this, they can make their own decision if I did the right thing or not. I don't know. But that's what I did. And, looking back, I probably would have done the same thing. I just wanted her home. There was no reason for her to be there anymore. And so anyway, that was a big split between us. That really hurt our relationship. And, her sister and I went up to visit her, again. And we stayed with her. I tried my best to keep, contact with her. But things just went south.
It was interesting too when you first said, like, right when she joined, she came home and she already sounded like she was angry at you. Like you guys had tricked her by teaching her like the Christian religion rather than this. And so it sounds like she was already like in her head, like she already had an anger towards you guys, which I think it's,
Defensiveness.
yeah, I think that's interesting.
Well, I was listening, to y'all talking about the shadow study. As a parent, that just infuriates me. I mean, how dare, I had 6 children. I cannot tell you, I've sacrificed my life for them. I drove crappy cars so they can have my car. I gave my trust fund to her for spending money for college. I mean, I spent my trust money that I got from my mother's inheritance for her to have a car. I mean, I went without. I had crappy purses so they could have nice purses. I had crappy clothes so they could have nice clothes. I mean, I sacrificed. And they'll tell you that. I ran across the other day, I was pulling out something under my bed. I found a Mother's Day card that she had written me when she was like 10 or 12 years old. And it was like, to the greatest mother in the universe. If there was ever a mother that could have been any better than you, it doesn't exist. You were the greatest mother. There's never been another mother ever created that's been better than you. My son, when he was 10, it was a picture of the earth, and he said, "You are my stars and my moon. You are the reason that I'm alive. You're the best mother. You're the mother of the whole world." And I'm thinking, they took that away from my children. I mean, they hate me. They absolutely hate my guts. They have, to this day, they have taken me off their Facebook. I cannot call them by phone. I do not know where they live. I do not have an address. I don't know where my daughter is. I don't know where she works. I don't know where she lives. I don't know what church she's in for sure. I don't know anything about her. I haven't talked to her. It'll be 3 years. She'll be 28 years old in October. And I haven't talked to her since I went up there to see her 3 years ago. And I'll go into that story just a little bit. The last time I've seen them was 3 years ago. It was almost 3 years ago, minus a few months. But I just wanted to make sure my daughter was okay. I just had this terrible feeling. They moved her from Louisville after she said she graduated. I knew my son. I knew she wouldn't be penniless. I knew that he would take care of her, and he did. She says she graduated. She did online courses. We did sign the FAFSA stuff for her to, try to get, grants and all that. We did all that for her. She said she did. I don't know if she did graduate, but she did, she said. So after that, they moved her to New York, to New Windsor. Okay. Then after that, supposedly she went to, Manhattan. So I knew she was up in that area. I knew my son was up in that area. So I called him, and it was a day he answered, And I just kind of made him feel sorry for me, because I was like, I don't even know where my daughter is. I don't know where she lives. I don't know if she's all right. I said, can I come up? I said, can I come to one of your, one of your activities or your events that your church puts on, just so that I can see where you are and make sure she's okay? And
Can I pause really quick? I just really want to say that I think it's amazing how many times you went to them and you went to the church. And even though you were so uncomfortable, I know you were, and it was so awkward, and there was so many things you wanted to probably say, and but you constrained it all. I just think that that was really brave of you, because a lot of parents would not come into the church. They would just flat out refuse because they were so angry, of course. But for you to go there and to see them and to stay with them in their environment, I think that that was, I don't know, really good, nice of you to do.
I really loved them. But I went up there, and my son at that time, in 2017 of June, he married a woman in the church. And she had lost her mother. And she wanted him to tell me that I could be involved in their wedding or whatever, any way I wanted. Well, I was like, sure. But 2 weeks later, they were already married. So I missed that. So I don't know what all that happened, but I really wanted to meet her. And so I was so excited that I would meet her. I love her. I absolutely adore her. I think she's wonderful. I hope they stay married forever. I think she's perfect. I love her. And I wish I could have a relationship with her. I wish I would take her in like a daughter in a minute, but I can't. But I went up there, and so they met me. He and her met me at the airport, and I was so excited. She was so gracious, so kind, and so respectful. And he was too. And we got along, and it was like all the anger and hurt was over. It was like, I love you. And we hugged, and it was like everything was just good again. And I was like so excited. Now, my daughter, was very bitter and resentful because I had cut all the money off and sent somebody up to get the car and all that. My son had bought her another car. So she wasn't without a car for very long. And so anyway, we went out to eat that night, and it was just, I was like, wow, they seem to be doing well. My daughter looked good. She looked successful. She dressed nice and made me feel so good. And then the next day, I went to the church, and I mean, I was so trying so hard because I was so grateful. And so we drive up, and, there's a gated community. It's the New Windsor Church. And, they have to have a code to get in. And I was like, why do y'all have to have a code to get in? And my daughter says, oh, because of homeless people. Homeless people, they eat our food and sleep on our grounds, and we have to keep them locked out. Well, that wasn't the daughter I raised. I mean, we used to take food to homeless people. I mean, my daughter and I would bag up groceries and take it to families that didn't have food. I mean, we did that. We did that twice. And, families, the Bible camp that we worked for, we would bring those children home, and they would stay with us for the weekend, and they would be involved in our lives for weeks. We took in those people. And my husband works at the rescue mission. And, I'm thinking, and you hate homeless people. So I was like, wow, that's different. So we get in, and then, I'm shuffled around because they're doing these drone things with a whole bunch, hundreds and hundreds of members, doing these, I don't know, some kind of like letters, in their numbers, and they're doing drones above them. So they didn't want me to see that. So they rushed me around. But I get in the church, and I do have to say everybody was extremely gracious, extremely gracious. The head of the church came in and said, anything I need, anything, I could have. Of course, everybody knew exactly where I was at all times. I had the missionary that we had talked to, with my daughter in Louisville was there. I guess he was assigned to me because my son said I was bad. So he says, Mom, you're bad. And so I had to have someone, watch me, follow me around. Yeah, I will. And anyway, they said, take lots and lots of pictures, So I took lots of pictures. I did take a video of them doing cornhole, excuse me. They were playing a game, and it was the kimchi festival. So we went to that all day. I ate the kimchi food. I went around, saw all the videos. talked to all the members and their leaders and all that. I was very gracious. I tried my best to be a good face forward and not embarrass my children.
For doing that, did you feel like they were faking it? Did you feel like they were love bombing you, or did you truly feel like, oh, these people are so lovely?
Well, they were trying to be nice. I did see all the people on the Today Show. They had the Today Show. All those people that were interviewed on that, I saw them and I was like, wow, it's kind of interesting. But to answer your question, I wanted to go to a church service because I wanted to hear. And so the main pastor, the big guy, he did the sermon, and it was kind of to me, he said, if you're a family member, I only saw one other parent there. If you're a family member and you want to see your children, just join the church. It's very, very simple. Just join the church. Your family member. And I was like, well, I guess that's to me. And my son was called on to do the scripture reading, and I was sitting between my two children, and I wore the veil. And so at the end, everybody stood up and he told everybody to tell me that they love me. So, they chanted, "We love you" for 3 to 5 minutes, at the end.
Like they all stood there and looked at you and shouted, "We love you"?
Yeah, they all turned around and looked at me with the hand sign, the love hand sign.
Oh my gosh, that's so creepy.
But I just stood up and waved and said, thank you, thank you, thank you. So but I don't really feel like they love me. I don't really feel that head guy really loves me. And I would like to tell some of the things that are the reason I think that. I'm not particularly him, but some of the things that I think that caused a rift in our family that was very intentional. Some of the things that caused a rift in our family, there was like 4 major things.
I noticed that you continuously, whenever we talk to you, you always say intentional. So, and you said something very specific that they taught your children how to divorce their parents. So it seems like you can really see that this is these are intentional tactics to divide families. Is that correct?
That's my opinion. That's my opinion in my family. And I have 2 children, and I'm one of the rare ones. I've never had another parent tell me they had 2 children, because usually the other siblings are just shocked. And, so I have 2 children, and it was very, very similar, very, very similar the way, that we were very close. They loved me. They really, really, truly loved me growing up. They really felt like I was a good mother. And then it was slowly over time, I could see where, we're just the physical family. And I remember telling my son, I said, don't you think that there's something wrong with me not knowing where my daughter is? And he's like, Mom, he said, you're just the physical mother. He says, she's grown. She doesn't need a mother anymore. So, yeah, I do think that it's intentional. And I don't know exactly how they do it. But in our family, one of the things that they did was when my son was 22, he was going overseas. He was in the Navy, and he was going to be gone for a year. I wouldn't see him for a year. My son, my beloved son. And he had a month off. He spent all that doing work for the church. So the week before he was to go, he was going to spend the last 4 days with me. And I was like, oh, great. So I'm one of these Southern mothers, I've got all the food going. I got the house perfect. I've got all the friends coming over. I got the siblings coming over. We're all waiting. We're just ready. So he's supposed to be there at 4:30 in the afternoon. Well, at 10:30 in the morning, he calls and says, Mom, doesn't look like I'm going to make it. I'm like, what? He says, well, and then back then it took a little while for us to for them to get him 100%. He wasn't really lying at first. It took him about 3 years before he was just a professional liar, a perpetual liar. So he would tell me, he told me, he says, well, the church, he told me at that time that the church was thinking about doing a lawsuit against the Navy for their religious freedom on Saturdays. And they needed him to stay around to be around for some paperwork. So he couldn't come home, even though he's going to be gone a year. So I wasn't going to be able to see my son for a year. And I hadn't seen him for a long time before that. So, of course, I get extremely upset. And there was a big, I said some bad words about the mother. So I'm a blasphemer. And so that was a big rift in our family. Okay. And then another one was after I went up to see them in WMSCOG. I was going to we paid plane tickets for him, my son and his wife to come and visit us. And so again, you can imagine being a Southern mother. I have everything ready. The house is perfect. My husband's coming home from a business trip. He changes tickets. My two sons get off work. My daughter from college. We're all just extremely excited. I'm finishing up in the morning. We're supposed to go to the airport to pick him up. I get a text and said, "Hey, doesn't look like it. We're going to make it." So, we've paid $1,000 or two for the plane tickets. We never got that back. Everybody's changed their plans and they just don't come home. And it's because the church gave them something to do. I'm sure, that's my opinion, that the church gave them something to do, knowing that this would cause a big rift. So it caused a big rift. And then another one was my daughter, quitting the track team. Of course, that was a big rift. And I talked to the missionary. I called him. I have his cell phone number, and I called him that day and I said, "Look, you're her leader. You're supposed to be giving her advice. I'm going to cut it all off. I'm not going to pay for her to stay there." I said, "She can go to that church down here, but I'm not going to pay for her to stay in that church up there that far away from me when she doesn't have college paid for or, any of that. And she's lost her track scholarship." And I said, "You need to get on the phone and call her and give her some good advice." Well, he calls her right when she's walking in the office of the coach. So that didn't help. So, okay, that was something that was, got off on us. And then the other thing was the thing that really hurt. One thing I think I probably had almost a nervous breakdown over is after I went up there to see them at the WMSCOG, my daughter, we spent a day in the mall. I got us, double massages, bought her lunch. We went to see her. She loved Disney movies. We went to see Frozen 2 and Cinderella. And so we spent the day at the mall doing that. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to have a relationship with my daughter again. So she pulls up to the airport. She gets out of the car and she looks me in the face and she said, "Look, this hadn't fixed anything. I don't want you to know where I live. You don't want to know where I work. I don't want you to know what I do, who I hang out with. I'm not going to talk to you every week. I'm not going to talk to you every month. You'll just hear from me every once in a while." And then she pushed me away and walked away. And that's the last time I've seen her. That was 3 years ago. And I almost had a nervous breakdown off of that. That was just horrible. And, I haven't talked to her since. That was the last time I talked to her. So, I do think that what they do is intentional. In my family, it was. That's my opinion.
I'm so sorry that you went through that. I'm so sorry. Did your son know that your daughter had said those things to you? What was his reaction to her?
Yes, I told him. His thing is, he makes it light. He's lost his compassion for me. And so he says, "Mom, you're always the victim." And, this last year I got cancer. I had to go through chemo radiation. I used to have long blonde hair. I lost it all. And so the brothers, called him and said, "You need to talk to Mom. She could be dying." Well, I'm in remission, but we didn't know. And my daughter never contacted me, so I never heard from her. My youngest daughter said, "Hey, why don't you call Mom?" And my youngest daughter said, "Mom, I can't do that because if I do, she shuts me off. She won't talk to me. She blocks me." So anyway, I didn't hear from her, but he did call. And I was irritated because, I couldn't talk to my daughter on her birthday. A couple of them had gone by. And I asked him, I said, "Don't you think it's strange that I don't know where my daughter is?" And so when I said that, I guess he took that as an attack against the church. So he immediately starts yelling and screaming. And of course, I start yelling and screaming. I shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have done it. Did it anyway. But I just felt he was being very disrespectful. I told him he was a rebellious, disrespectful, dishonorable son by the way he was acting. And, so he said, "I'm hanging up." And he hung up and that was it. So I probably won't talk to him for a while. But I do have to say, when I left New Windsor, We hugged. I hugged him and his wife, and I thought, well, at least I'll have a relationship with them. But I could tell, the next phone call was a couple months later, and he was cold again. And the next phone call, he was really cold. And then the next time he talked to his dad, he said, "Dad, I'm not talking to you if you have that woman in the room." So something had changed. And then when we were the last phone call, when we were, when I had cancer and he called because his brothers asked him to, he said, "Mom," he says, "you were videoing the whole time." He says, "You were doing that to put it on the internet and make our church look bad." He said, he says, you did it." He says, "You're lying if you said you didn't." I didn't do that. I took a video of them playing cornhole. I took pictures, and everybody at the church said, "Take tons and tons of pictures." Because I guess they wanted to say, she can't say anything because she took tons and tons of pictures. But I could tell that they had turned him against me, is my feeling. I felt like that. I felt like that's my feeling. Something changed, that the way he dealt with me.
Caroline, have you ever done like a YouTube video or ever like done anything like this? I mean, is this podcast the first time you've ever gone online or?
This is the first time I have. I've had several people ask me to, but I had a relationship with my children at that time, and I didn't want to mess that up.
Yeah.
But I don't see where I've lost anything. There's no way I can contact them. I can't call them. I can't message them on Facebook. I can't get a hold of them. And I don't know I don't know where my son lives. I don't know where she lives. I don't even know where they are.
As a mother, that's so heartbreaking.
It is. It's not
and
right.
very scary. It's not right.
I've cried every time I've heard your story. I've heard it a few times now, and I just it still makes me cry. Your story is like an example of, some families have a little bit of what's happened to you. Some of them maybe don't have near like a little bit more, but your family has just had such a compilation of sadness and tragedy from their involvement.
But your story's not over. We're just in the middle of your journey. Like you said, it's a long marathon. It's once you become involved with this organization, you're going to be involved for a long time, unfortunately. So,
I do want to say, I'm thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I realize that there's parents out there that are in that desperation where you're running down the road after the car and you're just trying to get some information. What's going to happen? What is the story? What is going to happen? Well, I mean, I know, like Tony, you kept in contact with your family, and you didn't have the same story. So I'm sure there's lots of people that it's not as bad. But I wanted to do it for parents that were asking. Maybe they could listen and find something that they could do different that may make it work out better for them from my story. I thought another reason I'm doing this is I'm sure the administration is going to hear it. Maybe, probably, maybe they will realize, if they just let their family members be a part of their family, then we just back off. I mean, that's all we want. We just want to see them. Why not let them come home for Thanksgiving, see their brothers or sisters? My son, he hasn't seen his sister-in-law. He has a niece he's never seen. I mean, there's just so many things he's missed. Why not let him be a part of that? Most parents would be okay. I mean, they're grown children. They can believe what they want. The reason we get angry is because we feel like that they've been taken away from us, and we're angry, and we feel like mother bears, and we're, like taken up for our cubs because we don't want them to steal our children. And that's what we feel like. I mean, that's what I feel like. I don't know what the other parents feel like, but that's what I felt like, that they were taking my children away from me. But if they had just let them come, then there would be nothing that would be wrong. We'd have to respect their beliefs. So that's one of the reasons I'm on here. And the other is I'd like for, members in the church to think, I feel like somebody has gotten an axe and ripped my guts out. I mean, I can't even tell you the nervous breakdowns. I mean, when my son and his wife didn't show up at my house, I slept outside for 2 days. I mean, I couldn't even function. It was the rug was pulled out from under me. I couldn't function. And you, as a parent, you have to put this in the back of your box to go on. That's what a lot of parents get cynical. They give up because you have to go on. And you just have to put this in the back of the box. So when it comes back out of the box, just doing this podcast, it's going to take me about 4 days to get over it because it's very painful. And I didn't mean to cry. And my son will say, but that's why I'm doing this. Members, maybe you can be kinder. Maybe you can be kinder to your parents. Maybe you can still have some, a relationship, with your family. You can still try. My daughter tried for a while. She tried for a few years. She said, Mom, I can have both. I can have you and the church. And that worked for a little while, but it wasn't going to work. I just don't feel like that they were going to allow that. But that's just my feelings. That's my opinion. But
can I ask, I mean, I'm sure you get asked this all the time. This is the big question. What is your advice for parents who are in this situation? Do you have any mistakes you feel like maybe have been made, or maybe some things that you felt worked for a short time? Can you share that with us?
Well, the advice that I got, we got advice from people, that elders in our town, that we asked them. I said, what would you do? Try to keep a relationship at all possible. We tried that. Maybe your children will. Maybe you can. I mean, yours did, Tony. Maybe you'll have a different story. Just, we were told, if your daughter, continues to have a relationship with you, still pay the bills. If she's in college, still pay the bills. We did until, she quit her scholarship. And so, maybe do that. Keep reaching out. Just realize this, that the only way you're going to see your children, in my opinion, is to go to them. Go to their church, go to the church, spend as many times as they'll let you come up. Be nice. Try not to embarrass them. Just,
be careful not to get brainwashed yourself. Just like go in with a guard, if you're going to do a Bible study, make sure that you stay.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. I love that advice. I think some parents are afraid to go there or intimidated or something, but don't be intimidated. Those are your kids. You're allowed to go to the church.
I imagine like we would go to the church and go visit Tony, and my mom would go. But if they had moved Tony out of state, we would have lost our freaking minds. Like, it would have been a different story. So for us, it was just so happened that Tony was close enough that we could go visit on the weekends. She would miss family functions, and so that
But
was
they
stressful.
tried to move us. They moved us to different cities outside of Denver that were like 2 hours away, and they still came.
Yeah,
And
but
they still came. So I think that's
if they
really,
moved
really
out of
nice.
state, if they had moved you out of state, I do think that there would be a lot more anger in my soul as a family member. I feel lucky that you were only involved to the extent that you were, even though it was a long time that you were in it. You were never moved out of state. And like, just the imagining like you moving across the country, I would have lost moving.
She was moved from Louisville to New York.
Yeah.
My son was moved from Virginia Beach to New York. And, to me, to go visit is $2,000. So, it's a $2,000 trip every time you go visit your kids. And I had 6 kids, so I couldn't go very often. They made it so difficult, it was unfeasible,
And I think that it's so interesting that they took your beautiful, educated, your children were on their way for amazing things. And they took them, and then they took them to New York, where it seems, we're finding is the most severe training and severe, mind control tactics are being used over there. So I just kind of wanted the audience to get a full picture of what your family is like.
Beautiful. They're blonde and blue-eyed. My son was a football player at the Naval Academy, so he's brilliant. My daughter is gifted. She was like I said, All-American twice. She was the 8th best pole vaulter in the country, of all schools everywhere. And so they were highly gifted. They were my 2 children with the highest IQs. Yeah, they were a good catch. They were a good catch. And it is sad. And, like something else I wanted to say, members don't think about this, but especially when they're disassociated with their families. But, I walk around my home, I have pictures of my children, and it's like they're ghosts. It's like they're dead, but they're not dead. It's like I know they're alive. That gives me hope. But it's almost like there's death in the family. It's like there's a hole, there's a place. We have Thanksgiving pictures, Christmas pictures. They're not in it. And, as a mother, I remember my daughter, when you're a mother, you have an imprint of that child. I mean, I know what she feels like on my body. I know her little legs. I know her bony shoulders. I know what she feels like. And when you see as a mother, you see children, mothers with daughters, that are 12 years old and they're walking hand in hand. And I remember those days. And, so it's like a wound that just keeps opening up, over and over. And it never goes away. It's just this wound. And, I just want members to just think about that. They talk about that the mother is their real mother. The mother is not their real mother. I am their mother, So I think that I've said most everything I wanted to say.
There could be a slight chance that your children are listening. Is there a specific message that you would like to say to them?
Well, the reason that there's animosity is because I'm fighting like a mother bear for her children. I'm not going to give up. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Just walk away and to say, you just have them forever? That's why I don't want to give up. I would throw myself under a bus for them to this day. There's just nothing I would not do for them. And I do love them. And I guess I just wish that they would, realize that they could still be a part of our family and still go to church. I mean, they're adults. They can believe whatever they want to believe. They could still have a relationship with their brothers and sisters, but I don't know. I don't know why that's not possible.
Yeah, let me dry my tears here.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Karen,
thank you for
thank
sharing.
you so much for all of that. It's just you're articulate and you're strong, and we all feel for you. And let's talk with AJ now. Let's talk with the dad and kind of get anything that you want to say specific, or do you just want to kind of?
This is your chance, AJ. Is there something that you'd like to say to your children or to the WMSCOG or to other parents that are listening?
Well, I think we all know that this is an absolute cult, and it comes from North Korea. It wrote the book on brainwashing, and China learns this, in my opinion. But of all our children, our 6, the 2 strongest mentally, and very stubborn, very focused, very driven. I mean, you don't get to be, first team All-American every time you compete. And my son getting that full scholarship as a linebacker to Navy, they would have been the least likely to fall into this. And, you go back and you search, why did they do this? What happened? And, when a kid goes to college, especially when they leave their hometown, I believe he went up there and their senior year, they become very attractive to women because those guys, he get like a $40,000 signing bonus and they get an $80,000 salary right off the bat. And he felt guilty, what is my opinion of what was probably going on there. And here comes his commanding officer saying, "Hey, would you like to come to a Bible study?" And Bible study. He loved Bible studies. I mean, we had him 2 and 3 a week for his whole life. And he went, and that's how they got him. My daughter, she saw what happened to Caleb, and he pulled away. And anyway, it is heart wrenching. There are ghosts around here. I went up there to visit him and stayed with him up there 4 days. And I went to the church and I met with the head guy of the United States. Flew in to meet with me. And we sat in a room and they had a chalkboard and they wanted to talk to me about the Bible. And I said, I'm open. I'm pretty knowledgeable in the scriptures. So we go in there. There was two of them, my son and me. And they put 3 against 1 on the table. And I said, well, can he sit next to me so we can have like a square table? And they said, no, he's over here. I said, okay. And off they went. And they had an agenda. The agenda was to, the way they get people is they show them something in scripture that's kind of interesting. And then they say, look at this. And they follow the dots and it makes some type of sense. But I wouldn't let them do that. And that conversation went downhill. They wasn't able to convince me of anything. I said, that's not true. Look at what the verse says here. And you're saying it means that, but look at here. And that threw them curves.
That's interesting. Like, you as an adult man could go into that room and see how they had set the 3 people against you. And you could tell that that was like an intimidation tactic, like right off of the bat. And so if you're like 18 or 19 and you walk into a room, you might not even notice why you're feeling intimidated by this setup, but like, you're an adult, so you're like, okay, I see what you're doing. I want him on this side. And the fact that they were like, no, it's set up like this. I mean, I think that shows too why a lot of like younger college age students are easier to get involved in this than like a grown adult who kind of knows like, hey, that's not right. Like, this makes me feel uncomfortable. And I have enough sense to like say something about that. I mean, that's just interesting right there that you even remember that happening in that way.
Yeah. Well, my son went 4 years to that school. And when you play football, your weekends are tied up and their schedules are just incredible what they go through. And I could understand why he couldn't get up Sunday morning and go to church. Sometimes they wouldn't even fly in until Sunday morning from a game around the country. And so he went 4 years and never went to church, never really did much. And he was so focused on what it took to graduate there, and playing a sport like he did was overwhelming. And then as it slowed down at the end, he could finally come up for breath. And he wanted to go to Bible study. And, we saw the success that my daughter had at college, and it was overwhelming. Literally at the university, they have a billboard, and she was up there, made All-American. They would show her diving and jumping and things like that. Vaulting, and she become real popular. She was dating one of the starters on the national championship basketball team, and their parents were very strong Christians, and they actually intervened because they were in the same town and tried to help my daughter get out because they loved her. They saw her as a first class girl, and she was beautiful. She was intelligent. She was very polite, and they kind of saw their son maybe dating him, and they were blown away at what they did and how they were treated. And of course they pulled away. But it's been hard on the family. There is hope though. And I do believe that one day they'll come out, and I believe they'll do a podcast like you guys. Mm-hmm. They'll be very good at it, but it'll take them time. They're very knowledgeable in scriptures. They're very intelligent. That's what I can't understand, how they got duped into this. I mean, it is so obvious what is going on. I mean, the manipulation and but it's beyond the manipulation. It's a satanic thing. There is spirits outside of this world that I don't understand, that have the ability and the power to go in and just take over people's minds. And they let it happen. And there's nobody to blame but them. But I just saw them change. These 2 kids we could never catch them in lies. They always told the truth, and we just trusted them totally. And what was funny about our daughter, on her phone, I was paying for it, we had Find My Phone. We knew where she was, so we'd call her up, in the early days, and she would talk to us every time we called. It would say we knew where she was. She was at the mall preaching, as they say, recruiting. And she'd say, oh, I'm at my dorm, or she'd say, I'm on campus at the library, and she would say things like that. And we didn't want her to know we knew, because she would disconnect it. But that was for years. And every time, this time she didn't need to lie, but she turned into something that just wasn't her. And, we had money set aside for her to get through college if she had a little boat, things like that. she went in there, and when it happened, she just pulled all the money out, $10,000, and said, it's mine. And we did get 9,000 back because we put our foot down, and it wasn't her money, it was ours. And we reminded her. But anyway, what's funny is I came out of Catholicism. I desired to be a priest for many years, and when I started studying the Bible, I saw that's another cult. And what's so funny is they heard me. I have written books on that religion and why I left, and my testimony has been published tens of thousands of times in books that different people have asked permission to use my testimony in their book. And the similarities between that religion and this religion is just one has 7 feast days and one has 7 holy days, of obligation. One has, if you miss, the Sabbath at one, you go to hell. You miss the Mass on theirs, you go to hell. They have priests. One has deacons. Both of them have a female deity. And what I don't understand, this is kind of funny, and it's not funny, but when I went to visit the second time, I went in there, and there was a picture of this woman. She was heavy set in this white robe, and there were thousands of people around her. And I said, "Is that her?" And he goes, "That's her." And I said, "That is a picture of the Mother of God." I'm looking at it. I was making a little scene there, and he had to just pull my hair out. "Dad, you can't do that." But I'm looking at God Almighty. That's amazing. Oh my goodness. And that was, I just don't understand how they can't see what they're going through. It blows me away. Their intelligence, and it's just hard to.
Have you seen your daughter then since she's been in, or was that the last time you saw your son and then you haven't seen either of them?
He came here one day. He came down to Pensacola. He was setting up a church over there, and after the Today Show, then they told everybody to go home.
Okay.
Well, Pensacola, which is only an hour away, and he just knocks on our door, and there's my son. Anyway, I said, "Come in," and I said, "Let me hug you," and I hugged him, and he was standoffish, like he thought I was going to do something, and I said, "You're my son, and of course I'm going to hug you, and come on in, sit down, let's talk." And he was only there about 15 minutes, and he just had to get out of there. It was very good, but that's the last time I've seen him in.
That's the only time you've seen him in 12 years.
12 years. Now, I have Skyped with him, and we've Zoomed, but it's always about he's got a study. He wants to show me something in Scripture, and he wanted to show me how they recognize the Catholic Church as being an antichrist. And I said, "I'll listen." And we would spend hours on Skype looking at each other. He had his Bible, I had mine, but he had an agenda that was obvious. And he would go down this little, follow the dots, these verses, and he would get to one. I'd say, "Wait a minute. That's not what the verse says. Look at this verse." And it was frustrating because they want to, and that's how they get you. They put you in there and you watch these 1 hour shows times 10 and you can graduate, and then they'll tell you the truth. I mean, who does that? And I've told them, I said, the whole time you were Christians with us, did we ever hide anything? Was there ever a question we didn't answer Johnny on the spot? We don't cover something up. I mean, come on, wake up. And I keep saying wake up because that's exactly what needs to happen. And they're going to have to pull themselves out of this, the manipulation, and it's destroying their life. And I do realize, thanks to guys like you who put on these shows, I hear when they come out, they're going to be anti-God. They're going to be anti-Christian, anti-church. I realize that, and I'm not going to push it on them. Our home is wide open. They can come here. We got extra bedrooms. We can get them jobs. They're both very talented. They got great degrees. And we'll get them back on their feet. I mean, we'll take them in like it never happened. Of course we would. We love our children, and we want the best for them, and we'll do whatever we can to get them back on their feet again. And I just focus on that. But I thought it would have happened maybe 10 years ago and 7 years ago, and it ain't happening. But
well, you guys stay strong. I know it's impossible and most days, and infuriating, I imagine. I mean, Tony was in there for 12 years, so I definitely had days where I would say, "All right, that's it, I'm done with her." But just them knowing, if they hear this or hear it through the grapevine, just for them to know that you guys are unconditionally in love with them and that they have you there for no matter what at the end.
we were
As a member that was in there a long time, there were times when I had doubts, and then you feel shame and you feel kind of scared to go to your parents. So I love what you said, that you would take them back in a heartbeat with no questions asked. I mean, that's so beautiful.
Oh yeah, we would. I mean, we're their parents, and their family. They have 4 siblings that look up to them and respect them, and we'd love to have them back, and it's going to happen. I do realize that, but they're going to feel like they're going to feel bad, and I'm not going to say we told you so or anything like that. I mean, that's going to be very obvious. I'm trying to think of some things, a couple things I wrote down I wanted to say, but to other parents out there, I heard you ask Caroline that question about, what could you do to parents? If it's early enough, you can probably go get them, and you do need to. You got a window there that's very short, and you better go get them and do it immediately. And there was a time that I wanted to drive up there and get her car because we had enough influence to do that. She would have come with us. We were very confident of that at the time, but we put it off thinking she's going to come out. We just didn't know how overwhelmingly strong this thing is. And by the time a parent finds out, it's too late. When my son, he told me he was going to a Bible study, I was excited for him. I didn't know what kind of Bible study it was. And he called me up and says, Dad, we were a member of a church that water baptism was not a big deal. If you wanted to get water baptized, in the scriptures, no one got baptized before they were saved. You get baptized after you're saved. So they wanted to, and he said, Dad, I'm getting baptized. And I said, well, good. I'm glad to hear it. And he came, and after he did it, he called me up, and this is the moment I knew I had lost him. He was really excited about it. He was telling me some strange things, and I was asking him, and he knew not to cross certain lines, and he knew what to not say. But anyway, he said, Dad, when I came up out of that water, he said, my eyes were open. He said, I understood all things. And there was something happened to him right there. And he says, man, there's an anointing on me like I've never felt, and that's hogwash. There ain't nothing anointed on him, but something did. There's a spirit got a hold of him, all right, but it wasn't of God. And that's my opinion. But that was the moment I knew, oh, my gosh, when he said that. And then my other daughter, when she got wet, she said the exact same thing. Something happened to her, something magnificent, and everything is clear now. Did you have that happen to you, Tony?
Yeah, and you actually kind of can't sleep. You're so excited. You're in a different kind of state, because you're just so you can see now. Your spiritual eyes are open.
Yeah, whatever that means. And that just
right.
They have to, they keep them fatigued. They admit they work there at that church 10 hours a day.
7 days a week.
Yeah, 7 days a week. And
they got migraines all the time.
Yeah. He never had migraines. Now they got migraines. And his wife's and we know why they suffer. The stress they're under, and he was the kind of guy that's going to make a couple $100,000 a year. He just has that ability. He's a very high IQ. He's AJ on steroids. He's bigger, smarter, better looking. He's a better communicator. I mean, he's just both of those kids were very blessed kids. And they were just anointed by God in certain ways. They were, they're beautiful looking. They excelled in school. I never said a word to them about their grades. They just made A's at a very difficult school. And they excelled in their sport. They were both at the top of their game. And
she was homecoming queen.
Yeah, she was homecoming queen. And I can show you some pictures of her. I mean, but that's who they want. That's who they go after.
Yeah.
I was talking to him. I heard y'all talking. I work purposely go to mission houses where guys are under drug abuse and alcohol, and they're jobless or homeless. And I go in and help men like that because I believe that Jesus were around here today. That's who he went to help. They don't want any part of that. I was listening to tell me, no, those people drain us. And they're after money. I mean, you follow the dollar. Yeah, that's my opinion. Based on what they tell me, that's what it sure sounds like to me. They want the money. And there's estimates of how much that church pulls in, and it's staggering. You've heard the story. They hide cash under their clothes and fly international.
Long time ago,
yeah. We heard all.
Oh boy, have we heard the story. Yeah, it's Tony and I joke that real life is sometimes more interesting than a movie. Sometimes when we learn things about this
If it wasn't so tragic, though, I mean, because these are real people, and that's why I'm so thankful that you guys came on to speak with us because it's really brave of you. And I hope that your children are listening, and I hope that they know that you guys love them and that you're
come out
waiting.
podcast, you guys.
Come out and do a podcast.
Yes, they will. Really do. And I believe we'll laugh at this when they come on.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you so much for doing this. I'm just very grateful. It's been a comfort for me to listen to your podcast because I'm learning more, and it just makes me feel good that maybe one day my children would be one of the ones that could come out.
How could we help you guys financially? You know, how could people that listen to this, they need to realize you guys, you know, it's hard to do this for nothing day after day. How do we support you or try to help you?
Well, we could take this out, but are you guys the ones who do the monthly donation?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is
you
so
guys,
nice.
We didn't even know that was a possibility. We've never even put that up. But we should advertise that more.
But like you said, we spend a lot of time on the podcast, and me and my family are coming out of a cult. So even though we're in our later 30s, we're like still so behind, you know, and that's also something that keeps people in for so long. Like your children, you know, you lose this big chunk of time and then you think, oh my God, now what? Financially, how am I going to do this? You know, so you're just kind of like trying to dig yourself out.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's. I bet you went through a long, tough time trying to just get back in touch with the real world. And thank goodness somebody like Lindsay was there. But you know, they have no friends anymore. I mean, our kids had the closest friends you could possibly imagine. And when we see them around town, and you know, they don't even want to ask how are they because they know how bad it is. And I usually bring it up and say, you know, they're still in that cult, and
it's embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing for them to try to speak to us because we had the mutual friend was our children, and the coaches and the teachers that they had. You know, Mobile's not a big place, and we get around a lot, and everybody's hush hush about it, and no one calls them, and they still have their original cell phone numbers, and but every now and then I can talk one of their friends into calling them, but then they try to recruit them, and especially. Well, both of them. They're very goal-oriented. They're very task-oriented, and they get brownie points for recruiting people. So, man, they're going to go for it.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for speaking out because people, I know you guys have heard this. People always say, I would never join a cult. My family would never be involved in a cult. But when you hear about your beautiful, strong, close-knit family, and you guys, I mean, they had everything, you know, well-educated, smart, independent, all these things, and anybody is susceptible to joining a cult.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
And one thing that's really sad to me is the third son and the fourth son and my last daughter have just gone on. They're honing their crafts now. They've become good and experts in their fields. They're making lots of money and they're doing very well. One of them's moved to Boulder, Colorado. He works for Ball, that aerospace engineering.
Yeah.
Our daughter works
at a big computer company.
Yeah.
And she just was top salesperson. I mean, they're all over the world, and she was top salesperson.
And then we have a son that's a captain in the Army in Kuwait.
He's in overseas right now.
And he's doing very well. So the other kids are honing their crafts, and I can see them being successful in their 40s. These children, from what I've heard, a lot of the jobs that my son has are very menial, and he, you know, has changed jobs a lot. And I imagine my daughter, I don't know, but she probably has those same things.
They don't own a house. They'll never own one. You know how that works.
I believe that my daughter's probably in a small apartment with like 4 or 5 other women in Manhattan. So, you know, I believe she has it rough. She's always hurting for money, you know.
Yeah, we bought her a coat. I mean, she had, you know, people living down south don't need coats up there like New York, but she didn't have a coat.
Whenever we see them, we always give them money.
Yeah. It's hard to watch. It's hard to know what to do as a parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
sibling, and we've said this before, as a sibling, it's easier to be direct. Like I could just tell Tony that she was being dumb, But if my parents had said that to her, it has the opposite effect. There's like that little thing that if your parents tell you what to do, that you want to be rebellious. But for siblings, I think my advice has always been like get the siblings to sort of be the ones to be direct with them. Like you're kind of being a jerk, and kind of be more directive with them. Because coming from a parent, there's just that
But
automatic.
then again,
like,
you have to be careful because then,
Oh.
the daughter went into the cult. So that's
true.
it's so
Well,
tricky.
Well, like our youngest daughter, we made a decision. She cannot be in the room with our son alone. I mean, he cannot be trusted.
Right.
And so when he did come in town after the Today Show, the other two brothers had to buffer her. They were like, "You're not going in the car with her alone. You're not going to be alone with her. You can't be trusted." And that's really sad. That's really sad.
Right.
Well,
Thank you guys so much. I cannot thank you enough for telling your side of the story. It's really touching to hear.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And
Thank you so much. Keep in touch, okay?
hey, thank
right.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Guys,
Bye-bye. Boom, baby. All right. I love you. I'll call you in a little bit, okay?
That's like such a sad boom, baby.
It was a sad one. I want to go cry. Okay, I love you.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Bye.